Welcome back to the Holding Mo's Water podcast, where we support Oli Marmol extensions. Maybe I don't know. That came out of nowhere. What is happening? I'm so confused. I saw that press conference happen. I'm Josh. This is Andrew. If you're watching this for the first time, we record twice a week episodes, and this is emergency pod because what the heck is happening? Saw the press conference happen. My first initial reaction was, oh, they're going to extend Brian Helsley because there's been a little bit of chatter about that. Goldschmidt seems like that's something they'll do in the offseason potentially. And then they drop the Oli Marmol bomb. I just don't have words. What is happening? I like Oli, but like that seems really like odd. I don't understand the timing of this at all. Andrew, you saw the news come through. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I thought some player was going to get extended. I think Jeff Jones, some of the writers were like playing it as this time of spring where players get extended. And then Oli Marmol got extended. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I thought for sure they were going to wait at least until the end of the season to see how the season went. And maybe even like part with Marmol, maybe fire him if the season didn't go as planned. So I mean, it's not to say that he still can't be fired, but it just makes it less likely. Makes it seem like the team has faith in Marmol, which I think is fine. I don't blame him for what happened last year. I think what happened last year is just a lot of really unfortunate roster construction issues, a lot of just different player performance, a lot of different problems that you can't really control on his end. But yeah, I think it's weird, but I'm not entirely opposed to it as like 90% of Cardinals Twitter seems to be. So
Yeah, I feel like I like Oli. I've talked about that. My hat is so weird today. So like I thought he'd be the manager next year. I support him being the manager. But the timing just seems really odd. It also just kind of like I know it's a vote of confidence for him, so maybe that's going to help the clubhouse out some. Like I'm trying to think from their. I'm not justifying it. I'm just trying to think how are they thinking about it. Maybe they're like, hey, this will keep some continuity in the clubhouse. We don't have to worry about our manager being fired. There's not pressure on it right away. Even though, to your point, Andrew, I don't think they'll be afraid to pull the trigger. They haven't been in the past with Mike Matheny, Mike Schill, if they don't think things are going well. So if they're significantly under 500, I don't see them being like, well, we extended all these. We're going to have to try this out a little longer. Like, I think they'll be quick to pull the plug. But I just don't understand why they would do something like this. PR wise, it's a nightmare because, like you said, 90% of people hate this. I know you could say the same thing about Lynn and Gibson and all that, but like, it's not like they just realized this morning, oh crap, Ollie's in a contract year. Let's get a deal done. Like they've had all off season to figure this out, and then they decide today, like, oh, let's just figure this out right before the season starts. Like they could have closed this door all off season. It just seems really weird. Again, I'm an Oli Marmol guy. I like him. I'm not like if they'd fired him after the season, I would have understood why because of how horrible of a season it was. But to your point, we've talked about this at length. Roster, like you can't have your cake in 82 when we talk about the problems of the Cardinals, where people point to all these roster construction things and they're like, their pitching was so bad. Like, how on earth could any team win games with that pitching? And then they look at Ollie and they're like, how could you mismanage a staff this poorly? And it's like, how could both of these things be true? How can you say that it's Ollie's fault the team's bad, but then you also say that no team can play well when Jacob Barnes is pitching for you or when Drew Rom's starting for you? Like both things can't be true at the same time. It doesn't mean Ollie's a good manager because of those things, but like I don't think you can say it's Oli Marmol's fault the team's bad, but then also say it's also the team's fault for putting together a terrible team. Like you cannot convince me that Craig Counsell would have been better. Like, I mean, he would have been better maybe with the pitching staff, but you can't convince me he was going to make the pitching staff be great, you know? So that's where I kind of go back to this. And then also to defend Ollie a little bit, like people try to act like 2022 is an underperformance, but okay, they made the playoffs, they won the division, and they were a Ryan Helsley injury away from being up 1-0 in the Phillies. Like I know this is all what ifs, but there's a lot of managers who haven't been to the playoffs before, won a division before. That team was flawed too. They had to get pitching at the deadline to be able to make a run in the second half. And obviously last year's terrible. So that's kind of where I was at. And coming into this year's, I like Ollie, but there's enough reasons to believe that we should probably wait it out to see what happens this season before you extend him or do anything with that. But here we are. So I'm sure people are happy. Please, in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. What are your initial reactions about this? Um, Andrew, anything else kind of come into your brain after that little rant I just went on?
Yeah, I feel like they definitely should have waited. Managers are very replaceable, in my opinion. So even if there were like rumors that he could like go to another team after this year is over, which I don't think he would do, he came up with this organization the whole time. I don't see why we do this right away. Like maybe it helps. I think Ollie made a point where it's like it's nice to see that the organization has confidence in you. But he's also said at times that like, yeah, the fans should be calling for my job when the season goes as poorly as it did last year. So kind of two conflicting things for me. But I don't know. It's fine if they want to get rid of him after this year. They did that with Mike Matheny. They extended him and then fired him like 3 months into his extension. So yeah, I don't know. People shouldn't be as mad about it as they are because I don't think Ollie's as bad of a manager as most people think. But I also don't really see a reason for this to happen immediately. It's kind of confusing. When I saw the extension news, I was like, oh yeah, Goldie's going to get extended or Helsley or whoever. But I mean, Ollie was probably like the last person on my list who I thought would get extended. Maybe even Miles Michaelis or Lance Lynn gets an extension before him. But here we
Oh,
are.
no, wait. Oh my gosh. I'm not even like I don't even blame people for being mad. And usually I'm the person who's like, why are people so mad? Um I get it because it just feels so random and it feels so like, why didn't you do this earlier? And I know it gives the vote of confidence that you extend him. And I don't think, I mean, you've both said it multiple times. I don't think this stops them from firing him if something goes poorly. But at the same time, it's like, why? Just there's not enough of a good reason why to do this, especially with how on thin ice they are with the fan base right now. Um, it seemed odd to me. So I've been trying to think today. I mean, obviously it's only been a little bit of time since the news came out about different reasonings. And something I kind of been kind of thumbing a little bit and keeping an eye on, I think is really interesting, is that clearly like Yachty was the guy that people have had their eyes on as a potential replacement for Ollie if something were to happen. But Yachty's still not at camp. And I just don't I know I have confidence that if he signed on to be a manager, he's gonna give a different level of care, attention, desire to that job. But at the same time, I think the Cardinals probably have real questions about Yachty's commitment level, at least in this stage of his life, to being a manager. And so that's not the clear fit that I think people want to make it out to be. I like Danny Descalso, but I don't think that would necessarily excite people if they went that direction. Albert Pujols is interested in managing, but okay, he's never managed before, so maybe give him some time to figure that out. Obviously, there's outside people you could bring in so that they don't have to look internal, but that's something they like to do. Um, and also, I think on the pro side of it too, for them, like if you truly believe in Ollie, if the club does, and they truly think he's the guy, then making him a lame duck this year doesn't help him at all. And sure, like they don't owe it to him to not do that, but like let's just like Andrew, let's just say I'm your boss for a second and we're in a marketing firm and I keep telling you I believe in you and there's people that tell you that they think you suck at your job and I tell you all the time I don't think you suck at your job and if anything I think you're the future and but then I also leave you hanging with the promotion or I'm just like, "Hey, but like, I believe in you, but let's see how this plays out." Like that's not going to help at
Yeah.
all. And so again, like I said, John Mozeliak, the DeWitts, they'll fire him if they have to. They won't be afraid to do it. But it's a gesture, it's something to do. And it's I mean, as long as it doesn't affect spending in other directions, which I doubt Oli Marmol's contract will impact their spending. I know they're penny pinchers, but I don't think they're going to be like, well, we have Oli Marmol's contract on the books and hiring another manager, so I don't think we can sign a player. Like I don't think that's how it's going to work. Um, but it just makes sense to give that vote of confidence to your guy. But I don't understand why it didn't happen in November or December instead of 3 weeks before the season, 2 weeks before the season. So it's wild. Any of that like ring true for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's something that could have been handled a little bit better, kind of like how they signed Lance Lynn before they signed Sonny Gray. It's like, well, I don't know what's going on anymore. Maybe they just don't care about their PR, which is fine. And honestly, I think it makes sense, but like I feel like it's different than like a normal job where it's like, oh, if you're putting in your effort and you're doing a like good enough job that like people are gonna give you a promotion. Like you said, I feel like in this managerial role, the results do kind of matter. And even if front office ownership believes in a guy like Ollie knows that like Ollie can know that they back him, but like also know that he has to get the results on the
Oh yeah.
field before he gets an extension like that. I feel like it was a little bit premature in that regard. I get where the ownership would be coming from if that was kind of an issue, but also Ollie said like if you can't handle being on the hot seat, then you shouldn't be a manager. Like he's like his interview was pretty direct when he said that, but I think it's fine. People need to chill out a little bit. Like it when Craig Counsell went to the Cubs. Like he's not going to win them that many more games. Ollie being around next year is not going to win us or lose us that many more games. It's a manager. It's fine. And I don't think Yadi's ready to be the manager just yet. Like you said, he hasn't shown up at camp yet, even though like camp's almost over. Like the Dodgers and Padres open in Korea on Wednesday. So the season's pretty much here, and he still hasn't arrived at camp yet. I don't know if he actually will show up. I don't know if there's any reports on that. And Daniel Descalso, feel like he's going to get his feet wet with the bench coach role. There's a couple other guys that could do it, but like nobody that would really be that outstanding for the fan base, right? Like Albert Pujols has 8 more years with the Angels before he's allowed to leave that organization on his service contract. So if anything, he'll manage that team, which, you know, that'll be a mess. But I just don't see anybody else right now who I would look at and be like, yeah, this is the guy I want. Because if Yadi's managing the team and he has to like go check out his basketball team or whatever in Puerto Rico and has to leave for 2 weeks, I don't know.
Oh,
Like the fan base would be so mad at him, and I don't think we really need that for him right now. Just wait a couple years, and then he'll be ready. Because I don't think like you said with the commitment, if he's not at spring training right now with the Cardinals, then he's not going to be at spring training right now with any other team. So I'm not really that afraid of him going to a different club. And it's only through 2026, 2-year extension. At that point, I feel like Yachty would still be fairly open and new to managing, and he would probably be willing to take his first role at that point. So if we really wanted to pivot, then like it just gives us a couple more years to figure it out. It's not the worst thing. It's not the best thing. It's just like we signed Oli Marmol. Oh well.
yeah, I think it's so funny too because it's not like I mean, some people got to hear the news just first of Ollie's been extended, but like when you hear the string of events of there's a press conference, it's probably for a contract extension. I wonder who it's for. Maybe it's Ollie. Like it's just it's such a. I saw that. I just laughed. I was like, "What is happening?" To answer some of the questions in the chat, 'cause I know people are jumping in and out. Um, Ken San the first, I like this point is one thing that isn't talked enough about is how much the players believe in Ollie. It's a gesture to show confidence. At the end of this day, they can still fire him if things go bad. Totally agree with you there. There's been speculation from outside that he doesn't have the clubhouse, but you talk to anyone who's in the clubhouse, as in like a player or a coach or media that get to be there on a day-to-day basis, and they all say they love Ollie. Obviously, there is that Tyler O'Neill thing, but I'm going to be honest, there's other people in that clubhouse who had issues with Tyler O'Neill, and the front office had issues with Tyler O'Neill. It was not an Oli Marmol centric issue. Doesn't mean he handled it correctly with the whole base running thing, but how this affects Taylor Mauner's legacy, who knows? We'll have to see. That's a decades long question. Sorry, that was a chat in there. But then from Seth B, would you guys think that fans are right to question Mo for extending Ollie despite last season, but firing Schill despite 2021 in the 17-game win streak? I think we've both kind of said, yeah, it's fair for fans to question it. And the just because it's an unpopular decision doesn't make it the wrong decision all the time. Again, I like Ollie. I don't know if I don't even know if Andrew, you like Ollie as much as I do or not, but I think we both agree that like I don't think either of us thought he had to be fired this past year. I'm not mad that they extended him. I'm just like curious why they decided to. Obviously, you're not too offended by it either. And again, they could fire him at any notice that they need to. And they've shown that with Mike Schill. They've shown that with Mike Matheny. Yeah, Mo will do what he needs to do. And then also, like, kind of silver lining here or something that's interesting to keep an eye on, and which part of the reason why I thought they would maybe do something like this at the end of the year is that Mo's time is coming up, and 2025 is his last year, or should be his last year from what we've been told. So this might be, I mean, this seems like a Mo and ownership decision, but I kind of thought they'd wait to identify the front office first before extending Ollie. But there might be a weird situation in 2026 where you have like Hein Bloom in charge or Randy Flores in charge. And I don't know if Ollie's like their guy or not. So that's something I'm kind of interested to keep an eye on. So yeah, I mean, they're not they're not locked in. Like we've seen time and time again, managers they either retire or get fired. They very rarely have like a clean split from a club. So um yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's a crazy day.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Ollie a lot in 2022 because like I don't know, my thing in baseball is I hate umpires. I just don't like them. I feel like we have the technology to replace them, so like just do it. And Ollie likes giving it to the umpires, so that's something that I appreciate. And it seems like he's passionate. It seems like he really cares about winning. And honestly, with his like lineup decisions, with his like bullpen moves, every manager is going to make bad bullpen moves or lineup decisions according to the fan base. That's fine. I don't know if Taylor Motter playing every day is really his decision or the front office being like, hey, give Goldie and Arenado these rest days. I think he said that kind of was his decision, which is really weird. But hey, Taylor Motter is not on the team anymore. So I mean, Matt Carpenter kind of fills that role this year, but I feel like he's better than Taylor Motter. Either way, I'm not really like opposed or against him. Like last year was so bad, but I don't pin any of the blame on him really. I feel like the front office should have realized that, hey, maybe you can't go out with that rotation. But also the rotation kind of underperformed. We looked back, the 6 starting pitchers quote obviously is terrible, but like Waino was really good in 2022. Michaelis was an all-star. Montgomery had a really strong second half. So that's 3 guys that you were banking on to be really good. Jack Flaherty, hoping for a bounce back, but as your 4th starter, honestly, that's like fine. And Steven Matz is your 5th starter. Like honestly, you look on paper, that rotation wasn't really as bad as people want to say it was. If you
Like
look
projected.
at, yeah, like obviously it completely fell off the rails. And if you look on paper, honestly, the rotation in 2023 on paper might actually be comparable to the rotation this year, which is why I'm kind of scared. I don't think the wheels are going to completely fall off. But like there were obvious issues with the roster construction and just like player performance in general. And Ollie can't tell Jack Flaherty not to throw his changeups right down the middle, right? Like that's not something that he can do. So like at some point you have to hold the players accountable as well. And I think they've done a good job of doing that and bringing the right leadership, whether or not you like it. They've made the right moves this season. So I feel like the excuses for Ollie, if we have another bad season, I won't stand behind Ollie. But I feel like last year was just it's hard to look at that and be like, yeah, that was all Ollie's fault because there's just a lot of issues.
Totally. And honestly, I was thinking about this the other day, and I kind of want to write about it a little bit. I was thinking, like, what are some of like the decisions that people last year, including myself, I'm not saying I wasn't like outside of this, that we like clamored for. Jordan Walker to make opening day roster. Remember, everyone was like, he has to make it. He started off the hot hit streak, and then he had to get sent down, and people were really mad about it. But like he had fell off, and he was just hitting ground balls and was not good enough. And then they called him back up. He was great offensively, but his defense was horrible. And they knew he wasn't ready, but they kind of made it happen. But like all the fans I was one of the people in spring training too, were like, Jordan Walker is ready. And he clearly wasn't defensively. And he wasn't ready in April, at least hitting wise. I know he had the hit streak, but a hit streak is cool, but like in the grand scheme of things, he wasn't doing what he needed to do. Remember, everyone wanted Mason Win up. He finally came up the end of the year after he destroyed AAA, and he was really bad offensively. So do we think he would have been really good offensively in May and June? Probably not. Jake Woodford, he had a really good spring training, and people were really excited about it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then he was horrible. What else? Like people were like, "Oh, get Jack." Oh, remember Jordan Hicks? Like I was also mad. I was like, "DFA Jordan Hicks ends up being one of the best relievers on the club at some point and gets traded for some assets." Okay. Um, Paul DeYoung was pretty good when he came back, and no one wanted him to come back, and then he was bad. Taylor Motter, no one wanted him to play it. No one wanted Oli to play him, but also he didn't have a backup shortstop on his roster. So what else was he gonna do? I'm just thinking all these different things. Like, yes, you can point to random things where it's like, yeah, he probably mishandled that or whatever. But then you even go like, this rotation's terrible. Bring up Matthew Liberatore. Remember, everyone wanted Matthew Liberatore because he started off the season really hot and then he was terrible. Like, how? Like, you can't blame those things on Ollie. Um, I know we could say that managers should get the best out of their club. But yeah, and Jacob brings up a good point right now. Like this is the conversation I'm about Victor Scott, and it doesn't mean he isn't ready, but like that's the risk is that we might fans and myself included might be like we want Victor Scott, and he might be not ready. So I just I think sometimes we like to look back and we have a 2020 vision with the hindsight saying like, oh, all these things were bad and you should have seen it coming. But then if you go back to the actual context, like it wasn't as clear as you think it was. I know some people didn't like the rotation. A lot of people didn't like the rotation, but objectively, it wasn't supposed to be that bad. And people who say they knew it was going to be that bad, or I'm sorry, you didn't, or you're just a pessimist who says it's always going to be that bad and you got it right for once in every 20 years about the Cardinals. Um, and then thinking of, like, you made a comment about the rotation right now. I agree. In a lot of ways, it's very similar, like worries that you do about what happened last year. I personally think like the upside that last year's rotation could have had, they sacrificed to have a higher floor this year. So like you're still worried about the rotation, but I'm not worried that it's going to fall off as bad as it did last year. I'm just worried that it doesn't have the potential to be really like to be pretty good because last year you did have Jack Flaherty who knows, like they were hoping he could bounce back and be really good. You had Jordan Montgomery. That would have been two frontline starters if Jack Flaherty bounced back. And then plus you would have had Miles Michaelis coming off an all-star year and Adam Wainwright, who was good until the end of 2022. So like that should have been a good number 4 starter. And then Steven Matz. Now this year, I'm like, I just don't see them being that bad, but I don't know outside of Sonny Gray who could be really good. So anyways, that rant went all different directions, but basically to say like, I just, the more I think about last year, the more I just don't understand how Ollie was at fault for that. But at the same time, you said it's a results business, and so if they decided to get rid of Ollie before this year, I wouldn't have blamed him. It would have made I would have been like, yeah, it makes sense. Like I like him, and I wish him well elsewhere, but it didn't work out. And if things don't go well this year, I have a strong feeling that you and I and Sandy, especially if it looks like it's the roster should be doing better than it is, we're going to be like, hey, it might be time for Ollie to go. So we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like that pretty much sums it up. It's not don't overreact on Twitter. Don't harass. Like I saw Katie Woo's tweet, it had like 9 likes and like 35 comments. It's like, let's not.
Oh,
Like, let's just
gosh.
chill. Do you want to talk about Dylan Cease real quick to the Padres? Because I know you guys talked
Oh,
about
yeah. I guess that was a thing.
Yeah.
We could talk more about that on Sunday too, but initial reaction was I wish they could have pulled something off like that.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, we don't know if they check. Obviously, they weren't in the negotiations, but like I hear this about the NBA sometimes where like, you know how players ask out and they're like, "Hey, I want to leave." Like people make the joke, it's like front offices don't just sit around all day and be like, "I wonder what we're going to do." And then once their player asks out, they're like, "Oh, let's try and make some signings and trades." Like front offices have it, like they do stuff all the time. So I'm sure they had been like probing the White Sox, figuring out what the market was like. Um it is frustrating that they weren't at the end of the bidding though. It's also hard to know like what would the White Sox want from the Cardinals because that Padres package was actually like really nice. At first, when the stuff came out, I was like, that's all they gave up. But then the full package came out. They gave up a pretty good reliever, 2 really good pitching prospects, and a good outfield prospect. I mean, it's not apples to apples with stuff like this, but like that to me sounds like Takao Roby or Tink Kent's plus like Cooper Jerpy, plus Chase Davis, plus someone else, maybe even more than that. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Ajacey would have had to be in there. That's quite the price to pay. And I personally think the rotation can make it to the deadline and they could be in contention. And then they really need to add a starter from there. So I'm of the opinion that I'm okay with them waiting to get a starter till later. Sorry if you can hear the dog, but he's being annoying. But I'm of the opinion that I'd like for them to wait and see if they can get a starter at a better price. But I don't think I'd be complaining right now if they made the trade. So
Yeah.
I'm not like really mad about it. And what makes me more mad is that Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell continue to sit out there. That's the one that I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Andrew?
I was surprised. I was like about to get on a plane back here, so I was like, "Oh, Dylan Cease to the Padres. That's odd." And then I had to turn my phone off. It's like, okay, that sucks. But yeah, I still think they need to go out there and get Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery. I don't know why they haven't done it. Blake Snell was teasing something on Instagram the other day, and it sounds like he wants to go to the Angels. Which, hey, if he signs one of those 1-year contracts, I have zero faith in the Angels to stay competitive. So trade deadline time, you can go snag him. But
interesting, yeah, that could be a good fit. So yeah, we'll have to see. Again, thanks for tuning in. We'll obviously have our episode on Sunday, and who knows, maybe there'll be another extension by then for John Mozeliak. Who knows? So. What a time to be alive, guys. What a time. I'm excited for opening day. I just want real baseball to happen and matter. So let's get to that and stop talking about spring training. So till next time, thanks for joining us. But we'll get Sandy's reactions at some point too. I honestly don't know how he feels because he's an Ollie guy, but he doesn't seem very happy about this. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time.